Well, we do a little repair on this hose. This is a hose I use for filling up the tires. It's got a gauge on it too. On one end, you see this is the part that you put on the valve, tire valve. And you know, these I've replaced it a couple times, and they crack right over here. I probably should have reinforced it before I put a new one on, but it's because they're bent over. I bend them over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Gorilla Tape, which is this stuff. But before we tape it on there, we're going to chemically clean it. I use starting fluid and some paper towels to chemically clean it so the tape sticks good, but that's not good enough solution. What you need to do after you put the tape on it, wrap it around a few times, is use some cable ties, and they work like little clamps. You can put one, like if the tape's here, you know, but one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, like a bunch of them. That actually really seals it up really good because they're kind of like working like plastic hose clamps, and plus with the tape and all that. Here's my little cat. Feather or Onyx, one of those two. They're looking the same, like they're looking the same now. I freaking can't even tell them apart unless I look real careful. There's a little pause down there, and Dixie was around here somewhere. But this is a, you know, it's a fast, expedient, you know, expeditious repair, if you want to use that word correctly. I don't know if that's used word correctly, but it'll even work for oil lines somewhat, because if you have enough of these tie ties as clamps, say you put a whole bunch of them almost all right next to each other, the oil is not going to really infiltrate the tape. It's going to be, you know, in other words, where the glue is, because it's going to be clamped. And besides, you're putting like compression fitting on it. I've even used it to, you're not supposed to, but I've temporarily even used this to repair a gas line. Not a real high pressure gas line, a low pressure gas line. I mean, but again, you know, you never know. If you're really in a pinch and you're in the middle of nowhere, you put enough tape on it, enough cable ties, it'll hold it up. Oh, there's Dixie. So I think, I don't know if that was Mom, if that might have been Onyx coming over there, but make sure they're all accounted for. But you know, it's a Redneck repair. Like in this case, I'm just putting on an air hose, so no big deal. But I have repaired, which you're not supposed to do in emergencies, fuel lines. So like, in other words, if you have this stuff in your car, or, you know, and say you got to repair a fuel line, or say you got to repair a radiator hose, you know, say, oh yeah, I got duct tape, or Gorilla Tape's better, you know, it's like souped up duct tape. But if you have these, besides, like if you put this on a radiator hose and you chemically cleaned it, and you taped it up really good, you chemically cleaned it with starting fluid, you probably should have starting fluid in the car anyway, just in case for something. But you have this, and that, and this, and then you clean it off really good with the starting fluid, and then you let it dry, and it's chemically clean. You put the tape on it a bunch of times, and you put the cable ties. That radiator hose is probably going to last a real long time, man. It probably might even last years, but it'll last long enough to get you home after you put the water in the car. So, you know, it makes the tape repair infinitely stronger using the cable ties. And this is going to be under pressure, so if I'm putting, you know, 50 pounds in a tire or something like that, or whatever you put, you know, sometimes, you know, it's 32, 40, depends on what you're doing. You know, this has got to handle that. So it will, though. It will. Okay, so I chemically clean this area. You can see it's all split up over here. So tape's going to go around here. It's going to be clamped here and here and here and here. And you know, I don't feel like waiting to get a hose. You know, it'll probably break anyway. So this repair will probably last longer than a new hose. Clean off with some paper towels. Next, we're going to put the tape around it a bunch of times. Well, put the tape around it. Monster tape, Gorilla Tape. I always call it Monster Tape too. So why I don't do it. I just sometimes call it that. But most people would call it a day. Just put a bunch of tape around it. You know, maybe they might not even. And make sure you clean it off, because before you put the tape on it, or else the glue doesn't stick that good. But the thing is, in hot sun and a lot of different things, exposure to chemicals or whatever, and it might be. That is Onyx over there. Hi, Onyx. I don't know where Feather is. She's always around though. Hides. And you know, so now when you put the cable ties on it, it's going to make it infinitely stronger. Some people just put one, you know, sometimes you just put one here, but if you put like one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, and here, and here, that thing is it's probably going to last longer than a new hose. Okay, so the cable ties are on here. Just before I cut them, I just want to demonstrate that I pull them really tight. Make sure they're like little hose clamps. I put some little ones and bigger ones. I don't know, red and black, whatever. Then we'll cut them off here with these little snips here. Okay, and that's a wrap. It should work. Well, it worked out pretty good. I put an extra couple more of those big heavy ones because what do you call those? Tie ties, cable ties, whatever you call those, cable ties. Because there's quite a bit of pressure in there. It's air pressure. It's not just so. I inflated the bike tire to it's 36/40 with 2 riders. I usually put it up to 40s. This way, if you lose a couple pounds, I'm still within specs. And tires on there too. Tire and the axles on there. I got to adjust it. Got to break the chain and make it a little bit shorter, possibly because it's 46 tooth in the back. But yeah, worked out fine. So, if it works pretty good on a compression, on an air hose, it's going to work on something minor. And like I said, if you put loads of those clamps on there like that, it makes a huge difference as to how well it seals. Because even if there's gas or oil behind it, I'm talking about for a temporary fix in that case, say you're stuck on the road. If you really wrap it up good, but not just with the tape, if you put like a clamps right next to each other, and with the with these ends like staggered, that if they're all right next to each other, that thing's going to seal up pretty damn good, man. It really works pretty good. That's what really makes it a lot stronger, because it's basically like having a slew of hose clamps and a heavy rubber wrapping around it. It's not just the glue that's doing it, it's actually like hose clamps. But anyway, and hopefully I'll get to the rest of this damn thing today. Make sure that tire holds air. It should. And I gotta clean the rim off, and I gotta do the front one. The front one's gonna be a lot easier. Usually just to change a tire, even a rear tire, is not that bad. It's just that you're adjusting the chain, and I don't know. This thing worked out pretty good. Just as a side note, I always keep a little extra grease around in here. What am I pointing this camera at? I can't even see, but assume it's right there. Well, there's Feather. There's Feather. Mama Cat just showed up, so all 4 of them are accounted for. Actually, if I don't wash in there, I just wipe it off or something, and I put some grease over it. That's why. Actually, I'm gonna probably put a separate video on that crap, because I think that's why these bearings go and these bearings go. If you got a lot of grease, and see how much grease in there, it don't wear out, man. They don't wear out. Anyway, that's something else. But the hose repair does work. I'm gonna probably put this out on both channels, American Russian Survival and my main channel still, because it's just kind of like a survival tip in a way. It is actually. What do? Cable ties along with that Gorilla tape, or just plain duct tape. Those cable ties is actually what's making that tape work so damn good. So, I mean, if you didn't even have the cable ties, you just had some vinyl wrapping or some crap, that'll work too, man.